The following is an EHC media production.
We taking control.
Yeah, come on.
We taking control.
Come on.
We taking control of our lives, and this time we are not letting go.
Yeah, come on.
We taking control.
Yeah, come on.
We taking control.
Come on.
We taking control of our lives, and this time we are not letting go.
Yeah, come on.
We taking.
What's going on, RWT family? My name is Emir Blackbane Costello, and I'd like to welcome you to the first episode of On Raw. Now, originally, this was a show that was supposed to be hosted by RWT family member Edgar Ventura, and it was going to be a review show for what happened on Raw, on a weekly basis. But unfortunately, Edgar was unable to be able to host the show, and so I thought, well, I don't want to just let this fall by the wayside because I already made a really cool logo for it. So I said, you know what, I'll host the show. But then I had this thought. I don't really feel like reviewing Raw every week. So instead, to me, a good concept for the War on Raw is to take a look at some of the issues about the show itself, or issues that are specific to the talent on the show, and discuss ideas, backstage stories, and the history of certain characters and stuff like that. Another thing that I think that will be kind of unique about this podcast is that I'm going to personally guarantee that there will be no episode of this podcast that is longer than 10 minutes. So while there won't be a minimum time, the maximum time will be 10 minutes. That way I don't hold you up all day, but I can still get some good thoughts out. So in this first episode of War on Raw, I just want to talk about, this morning I put up a post that had about 4 different incarnations of the Undertaker from over the years. And I just kind of put the caption, what's your favorite version of the Undertaker? And I talked about mine being the Ministry of Darkness Undertaker, which I thought was a brilliant character. From his choice of costume to his hairstyle, I think that the Undertaker was very vocal back then. He wasn't just, it wasn't the dead man character. I mean, he was still a dark character, but he was focused more on, his speeches were long-winded, and he was running. I mean, man, he had an entire faction underneath him. All those guys that were in the Ministry of Darkness, and they kidnapped Stephanie and they crucified Stone Cold Steve Austin. And it was just, it was pretty good. It was pretty good. They unified with the corporation at that time, and that was really my favorite version of the Undertaker. And that was also around the height of the rivalry. The intense rivalry between Undertaker and Stone Cold Steve Austin. And boy, I'm telling you, back then, maybe only The Rock could take a Stone Cold Stunner better than the Undertaker. I always thought it was really cool to watch Austin when he would stun the Undertaker. But also, those matches were intense, and when Taker would chokeslam Stone Cold, I loved it. I loved every minute of it. But with that being said, Dave Burnham, myself, and Daniel Crimmins began to kibitz about the Undertaker as he stands today. What's going on with the character? Should he be retired by now? Where we're going with this whole Undertaker thing? It's been so many years. And as we talked about on the post, and you can go back and take a look at it, I think we were all in agreement. For those of us who grew up watching the Undertaker, one thing that was really, really difficult to watch was, I know what you're thinking. You're thinking I'm going to say Undertaker losing the streak to Brock Lesnar. I always thought the streak would end. I saw interviews with Undertaker who said he hated the idea of a streak. He didn't like going undefeated at WrestleMania because he truly believes that no one man is bigger than the business, and he didn't like the fact that it made him, everybody around him loved the streak. Everybody who was aware of it loved it, but he felt like it put too much focus on him and not enough focus on the rest of the show. he didn't want to be that much of a spectacle. He wanted to kind of blend in and do what he could to make the show a success, but not make it all about him, because he's a fantastic stand-up guy. So when he lost to Brock Lesnar, it was shocking. But I thought to myself, well, at some point I believed that would happen. But I also thought that when he lost the streak to whoever he lost it to, and I know there was a number of candidates, a number of people that he wanted to put over and they didn't let him. But I thought whenever it happened that would be his last match, because what else are we holding on for here? And ultimately, that wasn't his last match. And so what I found from talking to Dave Burnham and Daniel Crimmins this morning is that we all three had a hard time watching Undertaker go against Roman Reigns at WrestleMania. It wasn't a good match, and I get it. It was Roman Reigns' coming out party, so to speak. It was, it's his yard, not the Undertaker's yard, and blah blah blah. But I just think you have the Undertaker go in there, and you didn't even make it a competitive match. You just basically, the basic concept of a squash match is that one person really beats down the other person, but also that it happens pretty quickly. In this instance, Roman Reigns just beat the Undertaker down, but it was really long and drawn out. It was meant to put an exclamation mark. Listen, if that was their idea of passing the torch, it was complete bullshit. You can pass the torch while having a competitive match. The idea of passing the torch doesn't mean that Roman Reigns gets to beat the shit out of the Undertaker, for 15 minutes or whatever it was. So cringeworthy, very difficult to watch, and it just felt disrespectful, and it felt like they were tarnishing my memories and my thoughts of the Undertaker. Seeing that, just no, I didn't respect it. I don't respect it. But with that being said, even after Undertaker folded up the trench coat and took off the gloves and left them in the middle of the ring, and we thought, okay, maybe that's it. Shitty way to go out, but at least it's finally over. And then it wasn't. And it continues to not be over. To the point that Taker is getting ready to go against Triple H one last time. One-on-one, they mean. In Melbourne, Australia, at the Super Showdown, which is such a weird name for a wrestling show in 2018. Super Showdown sounds like the kind of thing that you name a wrestling show back in the 80s, because that made sense for what was going on at that time. Come check out the Super Showdown. But now it's like, it's 2018 and we're still using names like this, and it's a little strange, but okay, it's happening. Point being is, there is speculation that then at Survivor Series, Triple H and Shawn Michaels will team up to take on the team of Kane and The Undertaker, the Brothers of Destruction. So the whole point of this, and if you started timing this from the time the show started until now, we're at 7 minutes and 49 seconds, and I'm going to get you out of here before the 10-minute mark, is that The Undertaker debuted at Survivor Series in 1991, I want to say. Maybe all of this has just been about getting him to another Survivor Series. So we're all thinking WrestleMania, right? Because it's the granddaddy of them all. It's the biggest show of the year. But what if all of this was really about just getting Undertaker to Survivor Series? Because the Phenom was born at Survivor Series. And perhaps all these years later, that's where the Phenom should go to die. So here's my theory, right here in this first episode of War on Raw. Even though it's supposed to be a tag team match and not a one-on-one match, I kind of think that the best way for Undertaker to go out at this point, why not let it be against two of his greatest rivals, with his on-air scripted brother at his side. Hell, I wouldn't even mind if Kane turned on The Undertaker during the match. I'd love to see Kane chokeslam and tombstone The Undertaker, Shawn Michaels pick him up and super kick him, and then he stumbled back into Triple H, who then pedigrees him and pins him. And let it be said that it took three of the greatest WWE superstars in history to finally put The Undertaker at rest. And after that man gets pinned at Survivor Series in Los Angeles, let the Druids come out, take his body, play the ominous music, and let the Undertaker finally rest in peace. That's it for episode 1 on the War on Raw. I'm going to be talking about all kinds of things. If you have something you want to hear me talk about, let me know in the comments section. And thank you so much for tuning in, RWT family. I'll see you next week.